Ladies and gentlemen, now in today's video we're going to be breaking down how to defeat Invisible Woman on Uncollected difficulty. I'm going to be showing you all of the tips and tricks, explaining how the invisibility works, how the force field works, and also talking about some of the best champion recommendations as well. But before we start, I just want to say something about the general difficulty, man. Invisible Woman is by far the hardest thing to defeat in this month's event quest, so if you can get through her, man, Namor is going to be a much easier time. Invisible Woman, I got absolutely trashed like 5 times in a row when I first fought this lass on the Uncollected live stream, but once I got to kind of learn her mechanics and animations a little bit better, she becomes a little bit more straightforward to fight. However, she has so many different ways that she can enter invisibility. She also has a lot of damage resistance with her force field and also a bit of regeneration with masochism. So this fight, more than anything, you really do need to bring champions that can deal a lot of damage if you want to get through it. And also you need to understand how invisibility works, when it's going to trigger, what to look out for, etc, etc. So yeah, we're going to be talking about all of that fun stuff in today's video. But I thought we'd, start this one off with a Venom one-shot on Invisible Woman. He's really great for this last man, especially because he has bleeds, which makes this fight significantly easier to deal with in comparison. But he's got the combination of great damage output and also bleeds as well, which just makes him absolutely fantastic here. So now that we've seen the fight once, let's jump into the abilities breakdown and talk about some of the stuff that's going on with Invisible Woman. Now, the key to being Invisible Woman is understanding the 5 different ways that invisibility can trigger. So there are 2 tied into the Awakened ability, and the first one is she's going to turn invisible right at the start of the fight for 2 seconds, and that one is never going to be paused. The second one is she has a 60% chance to turn invisible whenever she is knocked down. So whenever you use a heavy attack, whenever you use a special attack, there's a 60% chance that she's going to turn invisible there, and you've got to deal with that. Also, whenever she dodges an attack, kind of using the, what would be referred to as the dexterity mastery, so you're really going to see this one when fighting her. However, the much more threatening one is on the same line, and she's going to turn invisible whenever the force field is depleted, and that's kind of the counter that you're going to see in fight. So as soon as that hits 0, she's going to turn invisible, and again, that can happen both mid-combo and mid-special attack. So in terms of all of these ways as to which is the most threatening, it's definitely the force field one, man. So you've got to keep a very close eye on that. And also the final way is if you block the second hit of the special 2, so kind of the charge toward you on that one, she has a 50% chance to turn invisible then. So again, there are 5 different ways, man, but kind of the most threatening ones really are when the force field depletes and also when you knock her down. So you need to be very aware that those 2 methods, she's going to turn invisible, and those are going to happen a fair bit throughout the fight. Now, also to know, all invisibilities that you have, aside from the one right at the start of the fight, are going to start paused. So they are not going to move, they're going to last indefinitely, and the only way that you can remove these is attack into Invisible Woman's block or attack into Invisible Woman. However, you can still stun Invisible Woman while she is invisible, so the tactic really is get one parry, trigger masochism, get another parry, attack into her once, and then that will start the cooldown, which lets invisibility expire. So that one is a little bit of a pain to get used to, and it's made even more annoying in this fight specifically because of the masochism note, but that's the way that you deal with it. And again, we're going to showcase a few fights to give you an idea of how to actually pull that one off. However, if when Invisible Woman triggers invisibility through any of the mechanics that we've talked about, if she has a bleed on her, it's not going to be paused, so then it's going to expire after 2 seconds, and then you don't need to parry and hit into her. So bleed champions as well can be very useful for this matchup, but it needs to be somebody that very aggressively bleeds and deals a lot of damage to really get ahead of the curve with masochism. Like Blade is an absolutely fantastic champion, as well as Venom, Carnage, just a lot of very heavy bleed characters can be really valuable here. Another very very important thing to know about invisibility is when she goes invisible, she places a vulnerability on you. Now, this is just a standard debuff, and if you have a champion like Kingpin, Crossbones, Agent Venom, Captain America Infinity War, with the skill synergy as well, if you can shrug off this debuff and remove it, it will immediately remove invisibility from Invisible Woman. So you can use champions that have shrug off debuff mechanics to make this fight much easier, because you need to deal with a lot less invisibility there, and probably that is the most powerful and potent mechanic. You'll also notice whenever you go to damage Invisible Woman, you're not really dealing that much damage at the start of the fight, so she's going to start with a force field which is equivalent to 10% of her max health, and this heavily mitigates a lot of damage, 90% of the damage taken, and also increases her physical and energy resistance as well. But when this goes on cooldown, it goes on cooldown for 20 seconds, unless there's a reason such as ability accuracy reduction that it doesn't reform. So you've got to be aware of force field, and again, when it does expire, she is going to go invisible. Now, another thing to be aware of is whenever she uses her special 1, on the last hit, if the force field is active, it will add 25% to its current strength. However, if it's not active, the last hit has a chance to completely reset the cooldown, immediately activate it at a 50% chance, and restore it at 50% strength as well. So ideally, where possible, you want to kind of push toward the special 2 on Invisible Woman, because yeah, the special 1 dissipating and then having to deal with another force field and invisibility is just very annoying. Now, when it comes to the best champions and what champion should I pick for this fight, the biggest criteria that you're looking for is an insane amount of damage, because you're going to have to outpace 2 things. You need to outpace Masochism and also her force field as well, which is giving her a very big damage reduction. So big damage output from a champion is your number 1 thing that you're looking for. Then number 2 and 3, if they can bleed, that's a great bonus, but they need to be able to bleed very aggressively, or else you're just going to end up healing Invisible Woman a bit too much there. And also the other criteria is shrugging off debuffs. Champions like both Crossbones and Kingpin could be so good and very fun to use in this matchup, just because there's a lot of debuffs to shrug off with long distance, and also whenever you attack into Invisible Woman's force field, you gain a stack of exhaustion, or a 65% chance to gain a stack of that. So those champions can convert all of that stuff into much more fury. So Crossbones and Kingpin can actually be really good, but outside of that, man, there are so many kind of god tier, beyond god tier champions, high demigod tier champions that possess the capability to outdamage Invisible Woman. But damage is your number 1 criteria going into this fight once you understand how she works. So Archangel, Blade, Nick Fury, Domino, and Mega Red, all absolutely incredible options. And then we've got champions like Medusa, Corvus Glaive, Hyperion, Cull Obsidian, Captain America Infinity War. I would say some of the other champions are a little bit better than Catman, because he kind of, relies on those parries and heavy attacks, but he can still get the job done. My fully maxed out 5-star worked quite a treat for the Uncollected Invisible Woman. Also, Ghost can be really good. Gwenpool as well for her bleeds, Night Thrasher for his bleeds and damage output, Venom the Duck for his bleeds, Sabretooth with ideally the Killmonger synergy, because then you can completely ignore the Masochism node. You've also got Carnage there, so you've got a very long bleed on the heavy attacks. You've also got Venom as well, Ronin, Star-Lord, Winter Soldier. If you can play very well and get used to this fight, those champions that can ramp up could be very useful if you don't have other options. But obviously Winter Soldier with a Killmonger synergy, Darkhawk as well. If you can get to that special 3, get the heal block off, you can avoid some Masochism there and pump up your damage a fair bit. Also Quake, if you can play Quake style, man. I've already heard kind of through the grapevine that she's quite good and working quite well for a lot of players. She-Hulk as well for the damage ramp up, Crossbones, Kingpin, but literally anybody with some big tasty damage is going to work out very well for Uncollected Invisible Woman. So now we've covered the best champions and mechanics, I'm going to show you a character that's alright for this matchup, man. Captain America Infinity War. In terms of the kill time, Venom actually kills Invisible Woman much faster, rank 4, than my Captain America does fully maxed out, but I also probably make, you know, a few mistakes here and there in terms of the damage output, and this one is a little bit annoying as well, just because of all of the debuffs that are being inflicted via the note, and also her exhaustion as well. Like, it's constantly consuming your charges, so you can't really get the damage ramp up that you're after on Captain America. One of the very intimidating things about the fight is just how many icons are under Invisible Woman, man. There's a lot to pay attention, but kind of the main thing you want to look out for really is the invisibility. That's the biggest thing to look out for, and maybe also the masochism cooldown as well. So the standard timer is the masochism cooldown. So you can see her force field is at 28 just before using the special 3. So firing off the special 3 is going to deal enough damage to shatter the force field there, and that's going to immediately put her into invisibility, but this one is going to be paused, so we need to parry her twice. So once to trigger masochism, and then once again, and we're going to hit into her once just to get rid of the invisibility there. You can see it goes on to cooldown and expires. So for a lot of people, if you have a paused invisibility, that's one of the easiest ways to get rid of it, and again, you can do that with absolutely any champion, because you just need to parry like twice in a row, one to trigger masochism, and then again to, get the invisibility on cooldown. Invisible Woman's special attacks are really straightforward to deal with, because they both kind of follow the same evade pattern of they're both a blast at the start, and then kind of she hurls toward her opponent. So the special 2, she's gonna blast and then, you know, run towards you. You can get as far back as you want, but as soon as she kind of like stalls and staggers, that is the time to jump back in. Now, she's currently invisible. I could go for the special 3 here, but she's still going to be invisible when she's out of it. So I put invisibility on cooldown before throwing the special 3, just to make sure that when we do use the special 3 and break the force field, she's not immediately going to go into invisibility. This is because if invisibility is on cooldown, and whenever it expires it has a 10-second cooldown, it can't trigger back to back. Now, I guess that didn't really matter too much there, because we killed her, but it was just, you know, good force of habit. Next up, I just want to showcase Crossbones in the Invisible Woman matchup, because he's really good for occasionally shrugging off the invisible debuffs, especially when you're in the force field phase, because as you can see, when you're attacking into her, you gain a 65% chance to gain exhaustion, and then the more Furies Crossbone has from shrugging stuff off, the more of a chance he has to immediately convert those exhaustion debuffs into Furies. So Crossbones can get a really good damage ramp in this phase, but you gotta be a little bit careful with Crossbones as well. So what I'm trying to do with Crossbones is overrun just before I pop the force field, so I get 3 stacks of Fury here. So there's a very high chance that we're gonna immediately shrug off vulnerability, and we do it instantly there, which instantly removes Invisible Woman's invisibility and puts her on cooldown. So yeah, Crossbones can be really fun and really effective for this fight, man. It works really well, but again, he is very much subject to RNG, much like Kingpin, but both of the champions can work tremendously well in this fight, just because of the fact that they're getting a big old Fury boost from all of these debuffs that are knocking them out. So I was a little bit slow on that special 2-man, didn't manage to get in after, but it's alright, because we're just trying to get those Furies up by getting stacks of exhaustion, hitting into the force field. So we go to break the force field again just after this combo here, and very luckily we shrug it off immediately, so we don't need to deal with that invisibility, which is a really good time. You do always want to take that force field down very carefully though, because if you overextend your combo, then there is a chance that she's going to be invisible and attack straight into you, and if you don't have a champion like Crossbones, then, you know, she's guaranteed to attack into you if invisibility isn't on cooldown. So you've got to be very careful when breaking the force field that she could go invisible, but unfortunately I did mess up a little bit there and get wrecked by Crossbones, man, but it was a pretty good try. Then finally we have one of my favorite kills, man. I make a few misplays in this one because, again, there's so much to manage in the Invisible Woman matchup that I don't think I've had like a perfect kill or perfect try so far. We've had some very nice one-shots, and this is a really good one with Havok, man. Havok with his special 3 damage is so fun to play around with in this fight. So at the start, I'm just trying to get that force field down, just nuke into Invisible Woman, get my power up. There's nothing, you know, too special happening at the moment, so it's just a case of like parrying to try and get some openings. But again, she's really annoying when she has the force field because she's much more defensive as well. But we're beating into her, kind of gradually chipping down that force field. Here I do make a bit of a mistake. I overextend by 1 hit, but luckily she didn't retaliate in that interval, so I actually had the hit to trigger the cooldown of her invisibility there. So that was a pretty good time, man. That one worked out quite well, and then we just dodged the special 2 here, go straight back in for another 5 combo, and fire off the special 3. So she's at 92% at the moment. She doesn't have her force field active, and Havok's special 3, man, is just a really, really great time. Blast that lass all the way down to 14% there. So that was, you know, a pretty good outcome. However, her force field is about to recover, so, you know, we're not really in sniping territory anymore, just because that gives her so much damage mitigation. So we just need to carefully kind of bring this last force field down in order to finish off the matchup. So we've got her at 8 here, kind of gradually chipping away at this one. We go for 1 more hit, she goes invisible. We get the parry to trigger masochism. We do 1 more parry, 1 more hit in to trigger invisibility cooldown, and then we go for the finish, lads. So 1 more parry there, masochism, and then we go for another combo, special 2, and she is down. Now finally, to end this video, I want to show Blade versus Invisible Woman. So this was the kill that we managed to land, the very first one on the live stream here. So because of Blade's aggressiveness at the start, you're going to see we can pop the shield just before invisibility comes off cooldown, so she doesn't go invisible when the shield pops at the start, which is really, really nice there as well. Now Blade is so incredibly good for this matchup just because of all the bleeds off the special 1, off the parry as well, which means that almost all of the time she has a bleed active, which means you don't need to worry about kind of like unpausing the invisibility, so it just makes it really, really straightforward there. She had a dodge, so she activated her invisibility, and now is on a 10-second cooldown, so now we can pop the force field without having to worry about that at all, which is a really, really nice time. And then we go in for another combo. We get the parry there, another 5 combo, chain on a special 1. So after this, we're looking to bait out the special 2 after, you know, a few more cheeky little hits there, so we dodge that. However, we don't dodge the second part of it, so that's why she turned invisible, because again, if the second hit of her special 2, if you block it, she's a 50% chance to turn invisible. However, because of that early trigger, we could very quickly pop the force field and win the fight, so it, you know, turned out quite well. Blade is absolutely sick for that matchup. Then finally, I just want to end on a little bit of Sabretooth gameplay here. So Sabretooth is so good, especially with the Killmonger synergy for the Invisible Woman matchup, just because whenever you parry, whenever you bleed, it's going to completely ignore masochism. Now, thinking about this one as well, ideally I should have had the Omega Red synergy in, because you get more frequent bleeds, so it's just better for the invisibility expiration. So yeah, pro tip, ideally if you want to play Sabretooth, you want to bring both Killmonger and also Omega Red for the bleed, just to make sure you have 100% uptime, because you can see here the invisibility is paused and we have to parry and unpause it, but with Sabretooth you're not triggering masochism, so it's a much easier time, and because invisibility is on cooldown, we just managed to smash in there without kind of the worry of the force field shattering and her going invisible, so that was a pretty good time. However, we did kind of mess up a little bit there and block the second bit of the special 2, so that made her go invisible again. However, we got out of it very quickly, man. Sabretooth is so much fun for this fight, man, and he absolutely tears Invisible Woman apart. So he has a very strong recommendation from me, but again, any god tier champion or high demigod tier champion with very high damage output is going to work an absolute treat here. So we smashed out a heavy attack there just to trigger invisibility, and now what we want to do is we want to parry her, attack in once. I used a heavy attack there, which was a really stupid play, because she could have attacked back into me, but very luckily she's playing super defensive. So now we take down the force field and absolutely smack into this woman. Again, there have been a couple of misplays in this matchup, but still, it's going quite well with Sabretooth, man, and we didn't kind of pre-ramp him up before this fight as well. So if you have like a fully ramped up Sabretooth, you're going to have a really good time, especially with the full synergies against Invisible Woman. But there we go, that is the end of the Invisible Woman guide. Now, in terms of this fight, man, it's really quite tricky. There is a lot to keep track of. You've got invisibility, you've got force field, you've got masochism. There's so much stuff going on top of Invisible Woman's animations, which of course are a brand new champion, so you're not really used to them as well. So if you die on her a load, like, don't take it too hard on yourself, because she's a brand new champion. There is a lot going on in this fight, and in terms of all the Uncollected bosses that we've ever seen, she's definitely on the more tricky side. So just be aware, she is going to be a bit of a pain in the ass. She's very annoying to fight, but with a little bit of practice and perseverance, you can get through it. I believe in you, mate. But aside from that, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all of the best of luck with dealing with Invisible Woman. If you did enjoy today's video guide, please do smash that like button and share it with your alliance. That'd be greatly appreciated. Aside from that, take care, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic day.